Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gumption, the podcast where we talk about gumption, strangely enough. This week we're going to talk about Star Wars, and I'm not entirely certain where we're going to start. Have you guys got any ideas of where
I don't
we
know. We
go?
had a really fascinating conversation a few weeks ago about everything when we were talking about the new one that came out just last month, 2 months ago.
So who
I
do you who
can't
do you
count.
like better, Padme or Princess Leia? Is that a hard question?
I know people gave Padme a lot of trouble because she always had her face painted up and didn't have any expression. But I thought she was pretty strong too.
Hmm.
Although I think Princess Leia will always be my favorite because she's my
See, I
original.
think Rey is my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of either Padme or Princess
Yeah,
Leia.
Ray hasn't gone far enough for me to know her yet. I need
I
another
didn't
movie or two.
I didn't say Rey for a very particular reason because I don't think she can be compared to the other two as easily. She's a different kind of character in a lot of ways. I don't know.
That's true. That's true. She's her own. Her purpose is for her own self and not as
Well,
a
she's playing the
mirror for some
male
of
role,
the
the
men.
role that went to
Mm-hmm.
Luke and to Anakin, so it does really
Mm.
cast her differently.
Do you want to know
Yeah.
something really terrible that I found out the other day? Is that
What?
there are no dolls of Rey, or if there are very few, and that's a particular decision that the merchandisers or the toy manufacturers make because Rey is a girl and boys don't want to play with toys, and
No.
yes, totally, and they don't. And if you look back at all and boys are the ones that play with Star Wars toys, right? In general, is what they're saying. And they don't like to confuse the girl-boy matrix within the toy industry, so they didn't make Rey dolls, dolls of the character Rey. But
As the
apparently,
central character in the movie, that makes no sense.
I know it's crazy, right? But you look at if you go and have a
Well, and I
look at
bet what's her name, the actress who plays Rey, probably did not get paid as much as the men in the cast
I
either.
looked at it somewhere, and she got paid more than the ex-stormtrooper guy. I'm pretty sure,
Mm-hmm.
um, but not. I can't remember in terms of the others because he didn't get paid an awful lot. That guy. Because they basically played the newbies, not way less than they paid. Obviously, Harrison Ford
Well,
got like
yeah,
Yeah.
you wouldn't
megabucks
expect
for.
them to get paid the same as Harrison Ford, and
No, clearly
they
not.
have to
No.
prove themselves.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No.
But that makes
But isn't that
not to
shocking?
do a doll. That's ridiculous. They
But
did that
apparently
Yeah.
there's
with
been an
Leia
outcry.
dolls.
Of
There's been
course
an
there's
outcry
been an
for Ray
outcry.
dolls. Mm. But there was no outcry for Padme dolls or Princess Leia dolls. But I guess again, you said it before, they were kind of side characters, whereas Ray is like the main character in this movie.
Well,
Yeah.
I
So,
think there were Princess Leia dolls because I'm pretty sure I remember seeing them on the
mm.
shelves. But
Well,
that
just
was
not
back
as
in the
many.
70s. Oh yeah, not as many.
Yeah, like they weren't considered the main.
No,
Yeah,
no,
but
no,
anyway,
no,
I just
that because it was Luke. I
yeah,
hadn't heard that. I am now officially disturbed. What can we
yeah,
do about that?
I
Who
don't
can
know.
we write?
But it makes
Nobody.
sense if you think of it in terms of the toy aisles at the your local store, right? You go down there, and the boys and girls' toys are so strictly delineated that it makes
So
sense.
girls are not allowed to be Star Wars fans, apparently,
Mm,
according to the toy
yeah,
industry.
No, they just have to
yeah.
be fans of the boys.
Well, yeah, or they just because they don't want to make pink Star Wars toys, and so clearly all girls' toys have to be pink. So,
That's equally ridiculous. I mean, why would you make a pink Star Wars toy? There's nothing in Star Wars that's pink.
I know I'm not. I'm not
So
denying it, but
weird.
anyway,
Trudy's not
wait,
the
I was being
enemy.
slightly sarcastic. Mm. Anyway, so sorry to take us
We did
there,
not
but I'm
start
just
off on a high note there.
yeah, yeah. But she was such a great character, and I love the fact that there was an outcry. People
And really
saying, "Where is she?"
strong, too.
Yeah, I really liked her actually. Um, I like Princess Leia too, though, and I have to say I'm not that fond of Padme, and I don't know why. I think it's because potentially, and this you could probably going to, there's going to be some sort of feminist reason for me. This is uncool, but because she falls in love with Anakin, and I'm like, he's crazy, and clearly goes on to become Darth Vader, and how could anyone fall for such a?
But she
It shows
fell
such
for him
terrible decision
before he
making.
before he goes bad, and he goes bad because he
She dies.
disagrees with the Jedi that he has to be celibate. So, like, when they fall in love, it's all perfectly reasonable. And she doesn't want him to go to the dark side, but he does because he's like, this whole celibacy thing is dumb, and I can have
But
more
he-
power and have my love and have my children all at once if I go to the dark side.
But he was kind of angry the whole time, like even,
Well,
and I
but
guess you could kind of, it's a line between
I,
passion and anger, but I always found him a really angry character.
well, I think he was always questioning rules that are there for dumb reasons, like the whole celibacy thing. Um,
But he wasn't doing it in just a questioning way. He got angry about it, and
right.
that was kind of,
He
I feel
had
like it was part
he
of his
did.
character let him go to the dark side, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think because he was leaning towards the angry side of rebelliousness, he ended up going to the dark side. But I think I don't know.
I don't know. I just don't like
What-
main characters that I find I don't like, and that's maybe a failing of me. But any
It's
movie
not a
where
failing.
the main,
It's just the way you are.
yeah,
I mean, everybody's
like I
that
didn't
way.
like those movies because I knew that he was going to go the dark side.
Well, that's
And
the reason. I mean, that's the reason they made Star Wars in the order that they made them.
Yeah,
Because Lucas would have done them in the order he envisioned them, which would have made that movie first.
yeah.
And at that point, it would have been a different story. Because it's kind of like very Wuthering Heights in a way.
It is, yeah.
Mm.
Because you really don't understand. Now I'm forgetting the characters in Wuthering Heights, but you don't understand why they have
Heathcliff and Catherine.
Catherine and Heathcliff. Thank you. You don't understand why they have such I mean, you understand they have a strong connection, but you don't understand why she's so self-destructive, because clearly loving Heathcliff is very destructive to her. Where you understand why she doesn't gravitate toward the boring guy, but you don't really understand why she's constantly torturing herself with Heathcliff. And I think that vibe was supposed to go on, but Padme wasn't passionate enough to carry off a Heathcliff and Catherine type story.
So do you
I
think
think
it was the
it was
casting
the
of
opposite of that. I think Padme
No,
is
I think
not
it's the way she was written.
Padme isn't analogous to Catherine. Padme is analogous to Heathcliff.
No.
Yeah.
No, Heathcliff
Padme,
is the one who is
Heathcliff is
found
very
young and brought into another world where he doesn't belong and never really feels like he fits in.
right, but he's very his affections are very constant. And when he goes off and does something, it's because of a realization he has about Catherine. And his emotions are much, much steadier. Catherine is like off the wall crazy. She's like either wants to be a socialite, or she wants to be in love with Heathcliff, or she wants to be wandering the moors, and she's very volatile in that way. And Anakin, emotionally, Anakin is volatile in the same way that Catherine is volatile, whereas Padme is much steadier, like Heathcliff is.
But she doesn't have the passion. That's the problem. And
Well,
the way she was written, I don't think it was the actress.
Yeah, well, and I think it was partly both. I think they wrote her to be very unpassionate on the surface because she's been trained not to let any emotion show. And I think it's training, and I think she has the passion underneath, or she wouldn't do the things that she does. Like, she would never end up with Anakin if she didn't have some level of passion for him, because it goes against everything she's been trained for.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it that way.
But she does come across as very
She seems
cold.
very orderly, but one of the things they did in that movie that I thought was really interesting, and I know people talked about it and hated it, was how, like, she was always surrounded by her ladies who always had the same face painted on, because they would take turns being her. So that no one ever knew. And I thought that was really interesting, because in some ways it gives you a little bit of freedom. So when she wasn't actually being her, she had freedom to not be her. Sorry, let me mute that so you don't.
She's just muted herself as well. Oops.
Yeah, she.
I didn't think you needed to listen to me answering my answering machine.
Your
It's a
answering
really dumb
machine message is really funny, though. Sometime, Trudy, you'll have to listen to it when we're not on air, because it's funny.
But I do think
I'm not ringing you from New Zealand, though, just so you know. Just to listen to your answer phone.
No, that's okay. You will not miss anything if you don't listen to it. But one of the things I did like about that, because Princess Leia was front and center. Everybody knew who she was. She was all out there. And then when they got to Padme, she was, I mean, you didn't even know which one was the real Padme for a while.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting story-wise, although I don't think they really did enough with it. And that's my complaint about the entire Star Wars franchise. They don't do enough with the female characters.
Well, that's because
they might change that with Rey.
Like, wrote all of this stuff, came up with all the ideas for this stuff before. It was.
Well, he was the hero, and so he naturally cast the heroines in a very secondary.
Well, I think
role.
okay. This is my own personal opinion, but I don't think that he is a very balanced person himself, George Lucas. I mean, I think he's kind of
Goodness.
Patriarchal.
I didn't know that we'd be talking about the mental status of the writers.
Okay, all right. This is not a good thing for our third episode that we're going to go slander poor George Lucas for.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's his fault. I think it's society's fault. I mean, if you look at the timeline of when he was coming up with these films and the stories, and you look at the timeline of like the feminist revolution, the movies were coming out when the protesting was happening for like equal rights and stuff.
And science fiction fantasy now, there is still a strong male presence in science fiction. Like it's just a
and there are still there was like a little meme that I saw that someone was passing around on Facebook somewhere that was like talking about that. Like, you can write women in science fiction so long as you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't do this other thing.
Oh, really? But you don't know what those things were? I'd be curious.
I don't remember. I've been cleaning too much today.
I was
erased all the details.
Oh no, too much cleaning. I was in a writing group and it had, well, still am technically, although we don't meet as often, 3 men and 3 women, and it was always fascinating to see the things that and it's totally like just stereotyping men and women. Let's let me go with my stereotyping of men and women here. The differences in the things that the men would pick up and the things that the women would pick up in the stories that we wrote. And the men were always very technically orientated and with detail orientated. So they would say, right, in this scene here, I don't understand where he's looking, and I don't think that type of gun is the right type of gun. Or I'm not, not that I've ever talked about guns in my books, but like they would always pick up on the little, really small details. And I think that's a thing with science fiction, is that there's a lot of detail often. It's like talking about the specs for the spaceships that are coming out and that they're or whatever. Whereas the women were always like more relationship and character and that kind of orientation. And I'm not saying there'll be people out there who completely go against that stereotype, but I just think that that's part of it, and in that whole science fiction era anyway, because in sci-fi it's really science heavy and obviously, and there's always explanations behind stuff, and whereas you get fantasy can be a little bit more. You still have to follow the world, but you just are a little bit more open to sort of have wider and less science-based stuff.
I agree with you in general, but then I think it's really interesting to think about how a lot of the most famous sci-fi novels that have been read well outside of typical sci-fi readers are Lois Lowry's The Giver, The Hunger Games, which was written by Suzanne Collins, who's also a woman.
But that's I wouldn't put that as sci-fi. I would say both of those are more fantasy oriented than sci-fi in my head. I don't know. And
but
I also
they are
think
science fiction. There's no magic in it.
Okay,
There's
all
no
right, I'll
magic
give
in
you
it
that.
at all. And there's Lois
But
McMaster
then,
Bujold has this whole epic saga that is entirely science fiction. So like
but
the
then
people
I
that I
think,
think of as science fiction authors, all of the ones I like are women. And
yeah,
they
well,
have
same, literally same, because but that's the whole point. It's like they've got elements that are kind of adhering to maybe the normal sci-fi thing, but then they've got these other elements that they add in because they're female writers that makes them more generally or more broad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like so that
yeah,
more
that's what
people
I'm
like them,
saying,
men and women, whereas a lot of male writers, and here I go digging myself into the hole. A lot of male writers are writing books that are really for other male writers and aren't going to be as accessible to a reader like myself, because I don't really care about the specs of the spaceship that they're flying in. I want to know about the people who are inside it.
Yeah,
Do you reckon? Like, I'm sort of, I don't know.
It's like when I watch these movies, including the latest Star Wars movies, there's guaranteed to be about at least 10 minutes interspersed, sometimes in large bursts, through the film where I cannot follow the action. It's beyond, and I'm not interested in following it because I'm really interested in, like you're saying, the people and what's happening. I'm not interested in, how this ship gets blown up to 10 million pieces or anything. It's not, but it is too fast for my eyes. And so I'm always saying that to my husband and son when I go watch with them. I'm like, could you follow that? And they always say they can. I only half believe them because I don't know how they do.
Yeah.
Is that just
not
my
that
eyes?
hard. It's easy. There was a Stephen Pressfield email, and I don't know which one it was because I am behind on everything. So it could be one from this week or one from a few weeks ago. But he was talking about how in film, when you're filming, like there was some fight scene in some script he had written a long time ago, and the line in the script is like, there's an epic gunfight.
Yeah.
But then the filming of it is like really complicated because if you show someone firing the gun, you have to show where the bullet hits.
Mm-hmm.
In order for
I see. You have to see the action reaction or you don't get the
Right. Otherwise the audience gets lost. And so it's possible that that the clip that's showing the reaction is happening faster than you're expecting it to, or not in the order you're expecting it to.
And I've never been very sports oriented or very quick reflexes. So I think I'm just naturally not interested in following all of that stuff.
I think that's an important point. You're not interested in following it, and therefore you don't bother following it.
Right.
So that's the thing.
I'm not worried.
Isn't it a scene?
Film if I don't. So if I was, I'd work harder at it.
Are there books I don't know about you, but there's books where I've skipped pages because they were boring, and I'm thinking of
I do that.
what's it? Mammoth Hunters and the Valley of the Horses. Oh, what's her name?
Jean Owl.
Jean Owl, and those descriptions of pages and pages descriptions of the landscape and they were just so horrifically boring to me. Might be interesting to others, but
I enjoyed them, but sometimes if the story was really interesting, I might skip some of them.
I love the books though. I love the story. I devoured those books. I just skipped the boring details. Description.
Right.
I do that too, but I'm trying to come up with an example of a book where I've done it, and I'm like drawing blanks because I don't know.
Do you know what?
I know I've done it.
The other thing that's completely on a tangent that I wanted to mention was, so I was listening to people talking about the movie The Martian. So
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't read the book yet either.
And neither have I. I haven't read it and I haven't seen it, and I've been waiting. I was waiting for it to come out on video or on our Apple TV.
I listened to the audiobook. It was very good.
Yeah, and I haven't read the book, and I sort of think, maybe I should read the book instead. And they were describing the book and what was so great about it. It was two guys, and they were saying, oh man, he was really into NASA and he knew all of his science details, and he would spend, in the book, he spent pages describing all the minute detail of some aspect of sciencey stuff, and I was like, well, you lost me there.
Well, the one thing I will say about The Martian, and I don't know if you would enjoy that or not enjoy that, if you think you wouldn't, you might want to read a couple pages and see. But the one thing that saved that for me is that the details matter, because if he can't figure this out, he's going to die. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like watching a very involved episode of MacGyver, because everything
Okay.
he's trying to figure out is, it's like what you would really do. And so you're watching thinking, can you really do that? So for me, that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a lot of that kind of detail.
Well, because I'm still going to watch the movie, but it made me have second thoughts about reading the book, because I was thinking it's that whole thing of, I don't know if I'm really that worried about knowing.
I will say Andy Weir did a great job making that have some tension. And that's not easy to do, but I thought he did a great job. Now, I will say I do like science fiction, and I do like the details in science fiction, so that doesn't bother me. It's battles and that kind of stuff I don't get into.
You don't like? Well, see, I do like I like science fiction. I just like a certain kind of science fiction where the characters and the plot are important and the detail isn't.
Well, I definitely need
maybe
important
the detail
characters.
Yeah. Anyway, I
do think Star Wars kind of gives you that. I mean, it's really interesting to go back and see where, where Luke and Leia and Han have ended up. And, I was disappointed. I don't know if anybody else was. I was kind of disappointed where they ended up. It's like I would have thought they'd be doing much better, bigger things.
I know, right? That was a bit the same. I was like, oh man, they didn't stay together. That was like the romance of my early childhood. I was kind of like, what happened there? And then sorry, spoiler alert, but who hasn't seen it now? And then he dies. And it's just like, oh, and I just, yeah. But the other thing I wonder is how much do you think those three, so if we think of the first three, the second, the original, so the ones that came later but are the original first three, and then the ones that are coming out now, do you think that there is a representation of the times that they were made in? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, always.
Absolutely, yes. I think there definitely is.
Yeah. So what do you think that makes
really waiting. Like, I really hope that the world of Star Wars has a feminist revolution, because they're setting up Rey to have to make the same choice that Anakin had to make.
Yeah.
But it's
then even the fact that Rey is now the central character of it, does that not sort of maybe say we might be going somewhere with it? I don't know. So I know what you mean.
I don't know. I mean,
women would not make foolish decisions like that and cut themselves off from the entire other
but
gender.
I think they haven't even addressed the fact that she's the first female Jedi.
They haven't really at all. They don't even seem surprised.
It's like, oh yeah, of course.
Is she yet though? No, but I've been reading back. When I was reading before we started, and I was looking at the one site, and it said the top 10 female characters in Star Wars, and a lot of them are characters that have been in the books, like the Clone Wars books and stuff, that are outside of the movie, and there are a lot of female Jedi in there. So there were a couple of the characters, like one woman who started trading as a Jedi and then ends up marrying Luke Skywalker, and I don't even know if that's something that's going to happen in these movies and stuff. But
that doesn't make sense, because
so my son told me something about this. He said, because he has read and followed and paid attention to some of all the Star Wars after books that were set in the universe and that were sanctioned, and he said that most of them have been thrown out of the canon. It was deliberately done when they decided to do these movies. They said, okay, and I think there were a few that were kept in the canon. Everything else is now outside canon. So the things that happen in those books don't count.
But I just wonder whether. But then, when you say she's the first female Jedi, was she really, or is that actually something that's ever mentioned? Because maybe she's not actually. It is.
Well, I haven't watched any of the movies recently except for the one that just came out. So, my memory of these movies is several years old. But from my recollection of a lot of the conversations that Anakin has with his mentor guy, whose name I'm forgetting.
Obi-Wan.
Is it? I guess it is.
Obi-Wan Kenobi for Luke, yes.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was
for Anakin. He was played by little short Scottish guy, Ewan McGregor.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was the
So,
one,
so a
wasn't he?
lot of my
Qui-Gon.
recollection of those conversations is Obi-Wan telling Anakin, don't go see Padme. Don't follow your feelings for her. Like, you have to ignore your feelings for her because Jedi can't have relationships, and we're all, like, it's all men,
that's
and
not.
it's all...
Is it all men, though? Is it or just that you can't have a
Or
relationship?
at least in the movies, they only showed boys.
They did.
Because because I remember when they found out that Leia was of that same line, the Skywalker line. I never felt like it was going to mean that she couldn't become a Jedi if she wanted to, and maybe I missed something.
Why
and maybe
she didn't? Because
it ends before. It was like the last movie is just them standing happily together with the Ewoks. I mean, it's never said. And I guess, and potentially this latest, The Force Awakens one, well, she's obviously stayed on as a rebel leader, and it's blah blah blah. But I don't know. Was she not allowed to?
Well, I think they made it very clear that there was a societal assumption among the people in the world of Star Wars that Leia wouldn't become a Jedi because she has to give birth to the next generation.
Okay, I'm going.
That was clear to me, anyway.
I'm going to the God Google, and I'm saying.
And females
and I don't know if they did that on purpose or if they didn't do that on purpose. And I suspect that they did not do that on purpose simply because they weren't aware that that was wrong to do.
I don't know how to spell Princess Leia's name. I have the Princess.
It's Leia.
Thank you.
It's like a weird way of spelling Leia.
Yes, and I realized I was doing it wrong. I couldn't figure out why.
So what about when Vader says, now that you've let me know about your sister, now if you won't turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will. So maybe... And Leia does become a Jedi. It takes her about 35 years to complete her training, but that's mostly because her duties as Chief of State. And the New Republic made Jedi training really hard to finish.
But is that in one of the books that they threw out? Because it doesn't seem like she is a Jedi in the most recent movie when she's the general of the Resistance.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any Jedi powers.
Okay, so here I'm reading something, and J.J. Abrams actually had something to say on this fact. So, the original Star Wars trilogy confirmed that Leia is definitely Force sensitive, which I remember.
Yeah, but being Force sensitive and being a Jedi are not the same thing.
I've just found something that says that there was definitely female Jedi in the third of the first three movies, because they show a female Jedi being killed. It's just that all the male roles were the big roles, and you just didn't see any female Jedis because there weren't big roles for them. And that a woman can be Jedi, it's just in the original three, Luke was one of the few remaining Jedi left, and that's why you don't see any women Jedi. In the newer three, all the people with important roles are male. Like in the third one, where the Empress ends out in order to kill 66, out order 66 to kill all Jedi, there is a female Jedi clearly being killed, even though she's alien, she's still female.
Okay, and in Return of the Jedi, Luke does tell Leia that she would learn to use the Force in time. So there was an implication at the end of that movie that she would get Jedi training.
It's just they're not allowed to get married. Although even that, I didn't even know that till you told me that.
I mean, that's a whole... There's so much drama between Anakin and Obi-Wan in the first of the Anakin movies about that.
But it's about controlling your emotion and controlling your anger and your fear and anything, and remaining.
Right. That is what it's about. But it comes across as you can't follow your heart. You can't be with this woman because you can't be with anyone.
But that's different to whether women can be Jedis or not.
Yeah. But like all of these things that are technical details are subtle enough that me, having seen these movies 5 or 10 years ago or whenever it was that I saw them, I remember it being no women at all, and that it wasn't allowed. And I think it's interesting that the details of women being there are, it's almost like they're included for
aesthetic purposes.
Well, so that they can say,
bikinis.
well, actually, yes, we did include women in this, and yes, women were Jedi. We can, like,
But
it's like a affirmative action, like
Yes.
a token woman, just yes, there's one scene where a woman Jedi gets killed, therefore we're not.
But then is this an example
anti-women.
but is this an example of a guy writing a space opera, which is essentially what it is, which is essentially an adventure story for guys? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it? I
think it is, and he wrote them before this became a political issue.
But also, when you think about it, when you compare a Jedi to a priest, and you recognize that essential difference, it is rarer for women to choose that role than for men to choose that role.
Maybe that's part of the assumption, is because we are comparing the Jedi to priests. So in your head, maybe Aurelia, you said, okay, Jedi aren't allowed to get married; they must be like a priest. Well, in our world, priests don't get married, are only men, or at least they were.
Maybe. But
and then you just assume?
No, because here's something. So I'm reading what J.J. Abrams had to say, and they were trying to explain why it made sense that Leia did not, go pursue the Jedi training. And it says becoming a Jedi takes a lot of time, as well as the emotional discipline to let go of distractions and attachments. So they're saying, so for Leia, that would have meant taking time away from rebellion. And she was a fighter. Giving up her instinct to fight, but also, if she were going to get married and have children, those can be rather large
it feels very hollow to me. It feels like excuses.
No, it makes sense to me, because it's like.
Well, to me, it feels like excuses.
Yeah, but if you're going to be,
excuses?
They're
explanations of why everything.
On a mountain, you're going to do that on your own. That's what people who turn inward and really try and basically use their inner force do, is that it's not that they're unfriendly to people,
but that's not my issue. Isn't that it's not that I don't believe what he said about Leia. It's that it feels like an excuse to me because of Anakin's situation. Anakin has the training, and he has the skills, and he is able to be emotionally connected at the same time. He turns to the dark side because he isn't allowed to do what he wants to do. He effectively is pushed to the dark side because the Jedi are telling him you can't do.
Well, he could have chosen to leave the Jedi and stay married.
He did have a choice. He wanted everything.
You're kind of letting Anakin away with stuff. I feel like you're forgiving him for what I saw was kind of like his own character faults. Like, he went to the dark side because he was an angry guy.
No, he went to the dark side because he was a horrible person, but he was, for at least a short while in the first of the 3 movies about him, he was able to balance having the Force and using it with having this developing relationship with Padme. And yes, because he was a terrible person, he went to the dark side. I think it's possible for people to be. This is why it feels like a hollow excuse to me. Leia could have easily taken after Anakin in the way that she was able to balance both. And this is why I'm really worried about where they're going to go with Rey, because I don't want them to force her to make a choice the way that they forced Anakin to make a choice. I think that they need to realize that making her make that kind of a choice is a terrible social political commentary. And it was for Anakin as well, but the times were different when that movie was made.
Well, I don't even think it worked at that time. I think it was a terrible decision for them to be showing at the time in the first 3 movies, and I think that's why part of why I didn't like the first 3 movies is because I was like, I couldn't.
They're making you choose between work and family, and that's dumb.
A lot of people in history have been forced to make that choice. So it's
right. But if you're writing literature, then you should, and you want to explore that issue, then you should be exploring all sides of that issue.
No, but that's right. But in the first 3 movies, that's why it makes sense to me. I do wonder how much he changed the story of the first 3, after the success of the second three, because it took him a long time to come out with it. And I think basically he just had to fight to tell the story the way he wanted to tell it. And it would have been a very interesting thing if he had done all 9 and we had seen, because we still don't know where he's going with it.
Well, didn't he write like way more than 9 too?
No, I think he only had 9 planned, but I'm not positive about that.
Have you ever gone back? I went back and watched the first of the original Star Wars movies, so episode 4, whatever it is. Like not just before I watched The Force Awakens, so that I could remind myself of the storyline and remember the characters and stuff. And it was there was some really bad acting in those movies. Like apparently it was really low budget, and they just, yes sir, I will go and get that done immediately, Captain Vader. Like just this dodgy acting, and I just, I didn't know that it was going to be the success it was.
Of the special effects.
There wasn't much. I can't talk.
No.
I watched some random science fiction movie from the same era that Star Wars, the original ones, would have been filmed in. I don't even know what it was. It was like an aliens are coming type movie, and it was so bad.
If you want a really great bad movie, science fiction movie, you have to watch The Blob. And I will confess, and you have to watch the original. But you have to watch the original one, not the remake. And yes, they did remake it. Because, honest to God, this movie was made like in the late 50s or early 60s, and I saw it one time on television, black and white, and it terrified me, and I had nightmares about it for ages. And it was, how zombies are like so slow, and then you look at them and you go, why are you scared of zombies? You can outrun them without thinking about it. Well, The Blob was kind of the same way, so that the actors would just sort of stand there and scream while the blob slowly rolled toward them and started to absorb them. And it still terrified me. And, I would be embarrassed, I think, to watch it again, because I'm sure it had to have been the worst special effects in the world and still terrified me. So, like we do with books, even in movies, our minds are building everything that's not there. So you have to remember that.
I'm a Star Trek fan. That was the only TV I was allowed to watch when I was little, was Star Trek. But I can't watch the movies, like the modern remake movies. I like, but the old original ones, I have so much trouble watching them.
I used to love them. The one with the whales, where they were talking to the whales. And anyway, sorry.
That was a No. I grew up with really bad special effects, so everything from the 70s on looks semi-decent to me. I forgive them.
I think what happened though with for example, the Star Wars movies, is that they got good actors in the 3 main roles. Like Han Solo, Harrison Ford was by far and away the best actor in that entire thing. Like that is why he went on to have such a big career, because he was so good. Mm-hmm. And then Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, is that the right name? Mm-hmm. I'm not going insane.
I think so.
Yes.
Leia, they were, the next best ones, and they obviously carried it. Whereas and Darth Vader, I guess too, but all the bit parts, everyone else, they were just there for show. They were the padding around which everything else was based. Whereas now, everyone has to be good. Every single person in the movie is thought through and well-rounded, and I bet they'd have a story Bible for every single one of those characters in The Force Awakens. They know who they all are. And
it was definitely, I think, the most interesting. Like, I want to do a full marathon at some point where I go through and I watch them in chronological order. So, like, starting with Anakin and then going on to Luke and then doing Rey. But
How long is it
think
going to take them to do the next two? Has anybody heard?
I don't know. We could see.
I imagine one a year, but I mean, who knows? I thought they would have done them all at about the same time.
Yeah, so they can keep the same actors. Because I hate it when they change actors. I really, really hate it.
Well, if something happens to one of them, it sort of makes it safer for them if they film them all together and then just release them. But you know that the studios won't release them for at least a year apart, if not longer. You build up you think about how much anticipation they built up around The Force Awakens. How it was like a good 2 years before it actually came out that they started talking about it.
7 is coming out, or wait, 8 is coming out December of 2017.
Oh my God, 2 years.
Yeah.
They're in filming for 8 right now, but
And
yeah, it's 2017.
9 is coming out 2019.
Oh my God, 2 years between each film. Drives me bonkers.
Oh, it's interesting. I do not know who Rian Johnson is. That's the director of 7. And I don't know who Colin Trevorrow is either. He's the director of 8.
Oh, so they've got different directors each time. So J.J.
Well,
Abrams
and they're doing different producers and stuff too, I think.
Oh.
No, or maybe not. I don't know the words.
Yeah, I think producers usually aren't.
J.J. Abrams, though, is not doing the next one.
No, he's not. No, it's J.J. Abrams with 7. Rian Johnson is doing 8.
It was J.J. Abrams that did that Star Trek one with Chris Pine and those guys, and I love that.
Yeah, that was. And he did both of them, I think, the first one and the second one.
Okay.
And those I really like, and I hope they do another one.
Same. But then there's a lot of Star Trek people who don't like them, so I don't know.
Well, I think the Star Trek people who don't like them are traditionalists who are annoyed that the timeline got altered. I think it's that part more than the movie.
People who are used to comic books, where they do that all the time, they do reboots all the time, are more forgiving. People who like to, are used to novels or movies that don't, the stories and characters don't change completely. Yeah, they're more unsettled by that. So I think it did really have a divide.
I think if you've been following something really closely and you love it and you know all the storyline and everything like that, then yeah, it would annoy you if something came along that was completely against it. Whereas someone like me that doesn't, I like Star Trek and I've watched a lot of it, but I wouldn't call myself a Trekkie or someone who knows
all the details.
Well, it's kind of like I get really annoyed when they cut things out that make there be missing gaps when they're translating a book to a movie. And the first couple Harry Potters did this. And some of the Lord of the Rings did this too. I know they had to cut things out, but they ended up cutting. There were a few things, especially in the first 2 Harry Potter movies. There were a couple things that they cut out that made things not make sense. And I had friends who hadn't read the book and were watching the movie because it didn't really become a huge thing until like movie 3. So I had friends who hadn't read the book and they were trying to watch the first movie and the second movie, and they were like, I have no idea what's going on. And it's not a problem now, because now everyone's read the book, and if you haven't read the book, like, everyone will tell you to go read the book. But like they do that with other.
I think I remember hearing people say that.
Adaptations as well.
It's a real art, though, isn't it? Being able to cut a book back from an entire novel
it's
to a screenplay to a
art.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it works better than others. Like I read and then watched 50 Shades of Grey thing. And the book is written in first person. So you're inside the main character's head the whole time. So you know what she's thinking as everything is happening. But they didn't do that in the movie. In the movies, you're just seeing what happens as it happens, and you're hearing what people say. And I found the movie to be much more confusing than the book. Like she's she's contradicting herself seemingly for no reason. Because you're not in her head. You don't get to know what she's thinking and why she's making the decision to change her mind.
But see, isn't that an interesting, that'd be the difference between film and book, because film you can, except if you do sort of funny little voiceovers, you can never really get inside the head. But voiceovers, I'm not that keen on voiceovers, and I don't know that it would,
I think if
name
it's
it.
necessary. Well, I think there's more literary ones that are done well. Things like, oh my goodness, that movie that's really awesome that I'm completely blanking on what it's called, and I don't know if it was a book first or not. But
Who's in
oh my
it?
goodness, it's about like a writer who's writing a book on deadline, and there's this other character who's a guy who's like living his life, and he's super boring. He's like an accountant for the IRS
What's his name?
or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I know totally the movie with the guy Will Ferrell in it, and he's about to die, and Emma Thompson's the
Oh, I love
last.
that movie.
And so like
That movie.
she's narrating his life because she's writing a novel that for some reason, which is never explained because that would ruin the whole.
That's magically realism. You don't explain.
That's quite a quirky, quite a quirky narrative device that I don't think you can use across, except in that environment. Like it's a very.
Could have used it. I think they could have used it for 50 Shades and done it well, but they chose not to. Anyway.
I don't know. I haven't read that book or seen the movie, so I don't know. Or
I've seen the movie.
Those books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Just from what I've read about it, since I haven't read it or seen the movie, I'm not sure that the people who made the film had the same intention as the woman who wrote the books. So the woman who wrote the books was exploring an internal journey, and I think the people who made the movie were doing something more external.
Yeah.
Trying to make money from a franchise.
They were trying to make money from a thing that was going to sell well. But they ended up doing what they did was they did good enough instead of doing excellent. That's
I mean, I didn't mind the movie. I didn't think it was horrible.
It wasn't horrible. It just would have been better if you had access to what she was thinking and her decision making. And part of that, they could have had her talking to a friend about having to make this decision, or they,
journal writing.
Some
writing
way that she actually did think about it.
And it would have made sense for them to have her write in a journal sometimes because she's an editor, like she's a writer. That's what she does. So it would have made sense for them to have a little bit more of that, and they just chose not to.
That's interesting that you're talking about the difference between the film and the book, because there's another mention of this in relation to Star Wars, and talking about actually, the fight in the end where Rey is fighting, is it Kylo, the son, Han Solo's son?
Oh yeah.
Kylo Ren? Is that his name? And there's in the book, apparently, there's a really clear thing where there's a moment where there's a voice in her head saying, kill him, just get rid of him, it would be so easy. And then she makes the decision to move away from the dark side and actually not kill him and runs away. Whereas in the movie, you watch that scene and you don't get that really strong sense of he has battled and kind of gone to the dark side, and that she is also battling that light and dark, and she chooses the light. She chooses not to kill him and goes away. And you thought
that's what they were trying to do, but only because I understood the story of if I hadn't seen the others and hadn't thought about the story, I'm not sure I would have noticed.
I got it in the context of that she chose not to kill him for maybe a moral reason, but I didn't get the fact that it was a battle between light and dark. It was a choice that she made to move towards, like maybe I should have, because that's clearly the whole point of everything they do. But yeah, I just it's interesting because it's if people didn't have the book to fall back on,
because they've done that before. So that there were whispers or some, they could have symbolically made it a little stronger. Maybe because she's going to have to do the same battle again. Because this is only the first movie. So it's going to get worse.
Or better, depending on your.
Well, there's so much they could do. Like there's so much potential for them to do good things with the future movies. So I hope that they have a proper feminist revolution.
It does concern me that they're doing three different directions.
That they redeem Kylo Ren and have Kylo Ren and Rey
work together.
No,
there's no going back from that. You cannot kill Han Solo and expect redemption. That dude is going down. He's dead till Dead Town. Someone's gonna kill him.
But
Get to me.
so Han Solo
Han
got
Solo.
stabbed through the stomach, and he fell. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's dead.
You know, I said that to my husband, and he totally was like, "No, he's dead. He's really dead." I said, "I don't know."
Everyone is so convinced that he's actually dead that like it would be really funny.
It's like going back to Harry Potter. It's like going back to Harry Potter when Dumbledore dies. And I'm like, I was going, no, I didn't really die. No way that he really died. No, that's just ridiculous.
There was a thread about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I didn't have that reaction in Harry Potter to when Dumbledore died, because when Sirius Black died, I was like, no, he's not really dead. He'll come back. And then he never did. And so when Dumbledore died, I was like, oh, well, okay. When people die, they actually
do die. I think it's because she didn't write a convincing death scene. I think that she didn't convince me about it, and I think that was something to do with the way she put it across, rather than necessarily because I didn't believe either of the deaths. There's something about them I was kind of like, oh no. But
that could be just a long history of books like that in that genre. They do not kill off the major characters, and so we have a disbelief that they've killed them off.
And that's probably why Game of Thrones is so popular, because he's killing off everybody left and right, and so you know when someone is dead, they're dead.
But you think of, say, Hunger Games, something like that. I mean, that was a convincing death. When those kids started, like when that young girl died, like they were set up well. I don't know. Anyway, that was.
I know what you're saying, but on the other hand, the context for that is they all have to die. So you've already given the author permission to kill people, because I know a lot of people who will not, like especially if they're reading romance, they'll be like, okay, does somebody die in this? And if they do, then they don't read it because they don't want to be. It's like who is it? Nicholas Sparks, and there's two male authors.
Like A Walk to Remember.
Yeah, I mean, every book he does, it's like there's a lovely romance and then a tragic rest of your life, and that is the story that they tell. And so I know a lot of people who won't read those books because they're like, I don't want the tragic.
Well, ever since having children, I can't read stories that do mean things to children. And it didn't matter. I have this one book that was my favorite book. It was shall I mention it? It's called The Ugly Duckling by Iris Hope Johansson, and I loved that book. It was like my favorite book for a long, long time. I tried reading it again recently, and then I realized that the very first scene is her young daughter dying, and I was like, no, sorry, not happening that. And I haven't read it since, and haven't looked at it, haven't touched it, and will not, because I can't bear the thought of reading this entire book where she's devastated over the death of her 6-year-old daughter, and can't do it anymore.
I forgot about that book because I like that book too, but you're right.
Yeah.
It is sometimes just a time, a stage of life thing where you're like, no, that story is not going to satisfy me. It's going to haunt me forever.
Yeah, no, exactly. Anyway, so which is why I think, that they movies for our times. So this current Star Wars is pulling out all the things that kind of attract people of our generation or our time.
So what do you think those things are?
Well, female lead. It's okay to have a female lead now.
Even if it's not okay to have her doll.
Well, it's also
the merchandisers are behind the times.
Yeah, clearly.
All big corporations really are. Yeah, generally.
That's true.
They're calling Rey a Mary Sue, which is basically a character who is too perfect. A female sci-fi character who can do everything. Is too perfect. She can fight with the stick. She can fight people off.
She's a pilot. She's an engineer.
Yeah, she can beat. Suddenly has the force to beat off Kylo Ren. She's this perfect person. But it's kind of ironic. It's like you could probably have a similar character who is male, and I think this is a really important. Luke
took training. Luke took some training before he could do stuff.
Yeah, but not very much.
He had to. I don't know. He had Yoda telling him, stuff in Yoda speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of what Yoda was telling him is stuff that Rey probably could figure out on
Yours,
her
your
own
boss.
because she's, yeah.
She's a girl. Girls are better.
We do everything faster and earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I have no sympathy for people who think that Rey is a Mary Sue because when I was growing up, I was better at building sandcastles than all of the guys, and I was better at building forts than all of the guys. And like, it wasn't even a competition. I just would go off and do my own thing and not play with the guys because they couldn't keep up with me.
But that's
so like her being
the thing with Rey being totally isolated. I mean, Luke at least had his aunt and uncle, and he had, Obi-Wan Kenobi looking after him. And Rey, as far as we can see, she has no one, and that.
Well, apparently there was someone. She was adopted by someone on that planet initially, and that person has obviously died and left her alone to kind of struggle on her own. But I was reading. See, I was reading up on it yesterday. And in the book, it must be in the book maybe, and she's adopted by someone on that planet, and they kind of raise her to a certain age, whatever age, and then she's left on her own to struggle. And clearly for a long time, because she's got those scratches in the wall, and that's however many scratches.
Like she's waiting for something. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because that was part of the
She's
story.
waiting for
That's right. She was waiting for them to come back. Yes, I forgot about that.
And she's had to learn how to be self-sufficient.
Mm.
She's had to learn how to be smart because if she's not smart, she'll starve.
Mm.
Like she can't get
the mother of a lot of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, she can't get to the ship to scavenge for parts if she can't fly the little hovercraft thing. And if the hovercraft thing breaks, there's no one for her to go to get it fixed. But it's also like that whole family has a knack for understanding mechanics.
Although I thought that she was really paralleled with Han Solo. The fact that she gets on the ship and is kind of, fixing things and sort of completing Han Solo's sentences and things like that. Like it really, I was thinking at first, oh, she's going to be, one of his or something, his child somehow down the line. But then it's not. I don't think she is. But it's just interesting how and then they kill off Han Solo, so she's almost going to become the next Han Solo in the next movie, presumably, maybe.
That would be interesting. That would be something to see.
But at the same time, like Luke had a lot of technical knowledge. It just his technical skills had more to do with how to make engines go fast than how to make something fly.
Yeah.
So she's a little bit more of a generalist because she had to be, whereas Luke was more sheltered, he was more taken care of, so he could focus his technical interest on what was interesting to him, which was cars and robots. And Rey has to be very highly technically proficient at everything that might possibly break that is life-threatening if it breaks. So
when you think about her like that, she's a pretty amazing character. Like, someone who has basically only got herself. If anything happens to her, if she accidentally falls off her thing and breaks her leg, or the motorized scooter thing that she's on falters and she can't get out to the spaceship, or anything happens, that's it. She's probably going to die. It's actually, she's quite close to the edge, and that explains to me a lot of what she's able to do, because she's someone who's lived so close to the edge that you kind of that things further away from the edge become less important or less difficult or something. Do you know what I mean?
Like the things that would be the things that Padme takes for granted are things that Rey will never want. Because they're coming from such opposite backgrounds.
Yeah. And it is hard to sort of feel a connection to someone like Padme, who is so obviously in a completely different realm. Like she's highly pampered head of state who her concerns is politics, which most of us, at that really high state level, which most people, ordinary people, don't even bother with. You know what I mean? Whereas Rey is kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. It's a really interesting point, actually.
That's true.
Probably.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Very
Anyway.
different.
I have to sign off, guys.
Yeah,
So,
we should be done. What are we talking about next week?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I'm
I wrote
looking
the
it
list.
up.
I forgot to plug my
Except that I'm
computer in.
failing
It's
at
going to
looking it
die
up
in a second.
because I don't have the right thing in front of me.
Oh, there we go. Powered again.
We're talking about Bones next week.
Bones.
Ah.
Yay.
Bones next week. But in relation to, oh my goodness, I had a thing I was going to say. And this ties to, we're going to talk about Diana at some point, Princess Diana at some point in the future. And I just watched the documentary about her on Netflix. And I think it's really interesting because Princess Diana is a lot like Padme in how she was raised and what she was expected to do.
Mm.
And then she's like, she finds it, and I think Padme does as well, they find that kind of everything is taken care of for you, they find that restricting and confining, which is really interesting to see the parallels there.
Mm.
So it's hard for us to relate to, but it has its own problems.
Mm.
We still have our constrictions. We can't go all run out and buy as many Ray dolls as we want.
Clearly.
They don't make them. They should. They should make Ray dolls.
All right.
Her
Maybe I'll go
costume
and try.
design is really amazing, by the way. As someone who makes clothes, you know.
That's true. Just
All right.
add a doll line.
We will be back
Okay.
next week talking
Right.
about Bones and how Bones has gumption somehow. I don't know.
She does.
It'll be a
she does.
mystery. It'll be a mystery,
Yeah.
and we will discover
A
it next
mystery?
week.
It's not a mystery. It's clear for all to see.
All right. See you guys next week.
Bye.